Right, so welcome to the first ever episode of Cup of Chi. I'm Anthony Monteith, your host, and with me today is a close friend, a mentor in the martial arts. We share a common thread of wellness, general wellness for health. His name is Alan Kane. So, Alan, welcome to Cup of Chi. Thanks for joining me. I know we've had some technical issues starting this, but I'm hoping we can get some good content laid down for everybody. So if you just want to give us a brief overview of your journey to where you are now, I know it's a big one. So whatever you think.
Yeah. We'll shorten it down. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm delighted to be on the first podcast, and I think it's a great idea what we're trying to achieve here with the whole Cup of Chi and sharing the knowledge and giving people information about what's available, what we're doing, what's going on. And my journey, I suppose, started into martial arts first at 12 years of age. So I'm 50 years of age now, so I've been cracking on for a few years. And started with Aikido, trained in that for a while, and then unfortunately that school closed down and my teacher moved on. So I found Kempo Karate then, and I found a love for Kempo Karate and the whole physical nature of Kempo Karate and the dynamics of it, and the whole hard style martial art was really where I was at for quite a long time during the teenage years. Always had a fascination with kind of weapons. So not just my hands as weapons, but weapons in general. So I started to train in Kendo, first of all. So we really loved that kind of impact of Kendo, the body armor, the traditional training of Kendo, using the Shinai, very, very fast acting. And from there, we would have studied a little bit with the Okinawan weapons. So the short stick, middle stick, long stick, working through that kind of Budo format. So that really gave me a passion for the kind of weapons and the Japanese weapons. So I continued to train in Kempo Karate alongside this as well. And then along the way, I would have studied Tai Chi with Master Deng in Dublin, and my brother, who's a long-term practitioner of Tai Chi. So I would have spent a lot of time practicing one-on-one Tai Chi with him in the Yang style Tai Chi. Along the way, then, of course, I fell into the arms of Qigong, which is where the real love is. And I've studied with Chinese master Chun-Yi Lin, Korean masters, and then, of course, dedicated student of Mr. Anthony Monteith now for many, many years, leading me along the way into many, many wonderful aspects of Qigong and what it's about and where the reality of Qigong is. About 15 years ago, then, I also came across a Korean sword martial art called Haidong Gumdo. And so I was very, very lucky to have an amazing teacher in Master Doran Kim in Navan. So I used to travel back and forth. When I left Dublin, I moved out of Dublin. Growing up in Dublin was really where I was at until mid-20s. Then I moved out to the Midlands.
Was it quite rough in Dublin? Like, did you have to be able to handle yourself a bit? Or do you think...
Well, I grew up around kind of Palmerstown, Ballyfermot area, and you would have been, I wouldn't say it was overly rough, but martial arts was always about, self-protection, self-defense. Having that confidence.
Martial artists I've met come from Ballyfermot. It seems to have produced some pretty
all the good ones.
So you did the Doran Kim. I remember, I don't think I ever met him. I do remember him setting up a clinic in South Dublin with his partner at the time. Yeah. And then, so what drew you to the sword?
So again, after having practiced with Kendo for quite a long time, when I moved out to the Midlands, I was looking for somewhere to train. I wasn't fully active in Kempo at the time, and I hadn't found a studio in the Midlands. So I was looking for something to, continue on with my martial arts training alongside with the Qigong training. And I found the Doran Kim, Master Kim in Navan. And when I went over and did the first training with him, I just instantly said, okay, this Korean sword martial art, I'm really liking this. So I used to train with him 3-4 times a week, travel back and forth from Westmeath to Navan, wind, rain, snow, whatever it took, just got to get the job done, trained away. Did personal training with him one-on-one, worked through that. Went up and did my first stand then in 2007 with him. followed that on with further Dan tests. And then Durham, he decided to hang up his sword and went into the healing field. And so we were left with no headmaster in Ireland.
I believe you had a little part to play in helping him in his healing.
Yes.
And I was a key thing I've learned about you is you have this great catalyst. Like, you've helped me get my first belt in 20 odd years, and helped me get a Mini Cooper.
Great idea.
So what was it like training, like having a one-on-one doing the sword? Because obviously you decided, right, I'm not going to hang around, wait for classes to start. You were just going to go, right, I need to get direct access. What was that like? Because the Qigong and that sword martial art is tough. Qigong, man, it is like serious stuff.
So it was pretty intense. Like, some days I would go over and get on the floor with Master Kim, and it would be maybe 1 hour training he would have in his head. 4 hours later, he'd still be there training. And just like the Korean style was like, we've got to just keep training. And, we've done hell training sessions where it would be 8 hours training outdoors in the wind and the rain and whatever it was. So the one-on-one was pretty intense, but such a way to learn. Like, when you get access to somebody like that one-on-one, it's just amazing. Their skill set just comes right up because
is there any
training?
Is there any mad stories from that training that you can share, like where you kind of went, oh shit, like this is, can I go home now? But in your mind, you just kept going.
Yeah, well, yeah, there was many times when we were even just left standing in particular postures, and with this deep horse stance, hands up in front, sword on top, and Master Kim would say, okay, stay there, I'll be back in a few minutes. And a few minutes went on and on and on. And like, when you're in the old school training like that and one-on-one, you can't come out of that. Like, no matter how much you want to, how much you're shaking, how much you're trying to break down, it's just a matter of testing their character and your resilience.
Yeah. And
it was like, so many things like that. And, all of us as martial arts teachers, our favorite one is just one more round, So we'll just do one more set, another 10. We just do it all the time, But the one-on-one training was intense, but just such a gift.
Yeah. I mean, what my impression of knowing you over the years is that you're not afraid of a challenge. And certainly, like, when I visited your clinic for treatment, the wall is covered in nth amount of, I mean, that's probably only half the qualifications you have. And I know you've taken a more Zen approach and taken down most of them. But I remember in the early days, it's like plastered and stuff. You weren't afraid of studying. And I can see definitely over the years an evolution in what you're doing. And I see that you're being drawn more to the Qigong, and I get it, because, it's a thing for me too. And in fact, for me, it's actually the highest qualification I actually own. People think they know me for tui-na and acupuncture, but actually Qigong has been with me the longest. It's the biggest journey. What was, so I know Qigong has been there since you were a kid, but, and obviously sometimes we don't always realize that it's Qigong. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like, when you start to mature, maybe have a family, you start to go, oh, right, okay. So when was the moment for you when you went, okay, so what I'm trying to say, when was the moment when you realized that you were actually doing Qigong? This is actually Qigong that you're doing. What was that kind of defining moment?
Yeah, I suppose the defining, having, as you say, practicing, Kempo karate, Haidong Gumdo, Tai Chi along the way, you're experiencing this, level of Qigong along the way. And while not solely focusing on it, and then training as a kinesiologist and doing a lot of energy work and body work, you're accessing different levels of Qi. But I think, when I really, really started to acquire that energy of Qigong was when I started training with you. And, when you introduced me to the different forms and, the China universe system and things like that, then I really started to feel and to acquire the energy. And to then say, oh yeah, well, now I have something that's very, very usable, and I'm understanding more about it, and I can feel it in my body every day, and I can feel it in everything I do. So yeah, it was really when I started, after training with many, many different people as well. Once I started training with you then, and just your approach and how we work again one-on-one.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of good stuff one-on-one together, and
sure.
that's when it really started to come together for me. And, that's how it started to solidify for me.
Yeah. I think the relationship that I felt when we were training was like, kind of yours is kind of everything came at you at a young age, and then it was trying to find a path to decode that,
Yeah.
Whereas I got given a small bit of code, and then I spent trying to expand that code. So yours was kind of like a filter coming in. Mine was kind of like a little spark, and then searching. And now I feel like you've started searching now. It's like, it's hard to describe, but this is my impression of it. And I think the difference for me is like, I know what it's like to train with a master, right? And I know what it's like to train with people who call themselves a master. And then I know what it's like to train with a master instructor, as an example. And then I know what it's like to train with, I've never truly trained with someone who sits on the side of a mountain and does nothing but Qigong. I think those people nowadays are pretty much few and far between, right? There are a few out there still, but it doesn't necessarily make them the best instructor. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
I'm sure, it's great to train with these Korean masters, but sometimes they're just on a different wavelength, and I think for me, when we were working together, it was finding what works in a relationship, that what works for you to get you to understand it. And then really, I think the best type of instructor I come across is the one that unlocks the potential in you. So the person, it's not, it's the transmission of the basics. Like when you do the sword, it's all about cutting. It's all about the center line, maintaining that center line, maintaining the structure first, right? So the structure's first. And then relaxation, power. Then you can, because I started to feel that center. I know my training's been a bit haphazard, but I remember when I took my yellow belt, I could feel towards the end, even though I was knackered, I could feel that, because I was letting go, right? Because I was letting go of the tension. I could feel that connection between the sword and your center. And it's quite special. And I think that for you already had all of those things. You already had all those connections and feelings and feeling the chi. Whereas I was always looking for the chi, trying to feel. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So it was like a reverse. That's probably why we complemented each other. I think also, definitely probably the most dedicated person I've met. Like, you're probably the highest ranked. Well, I know you're the highest true black belt Haidong in Ireland, and you're probably the only person, maybe Fiona Jennings, the only person I know that does consistently the universe system, the China universe. In terms of then training with the Qigong and then teaching it, what are you noticing in the students? Are you noticing any? Because I find the challenge when I'm teaching is 90% of the time you have to keep it fairly superficial, right? Fairly kind of high level. And then you'll get one or two students who want to go deep. How are you finding it now that I know you're teaching online and stuff, but how are you finding having to repeat that journey a few times, like bring people, what I call the super beginners, those people that just have nothing. How are you finding that as a process?
Yeah, well, like you say, you'll always find, you'll have the number of people, and you'll always have that one person within the group who's, wants to go deeper, wants to understand more. And I kind of would work individually with them, take them aside and say, okay, what is it that you're looking for? Well, I want to do more of this, and I really find I'm connected to whatever it might be within the system we're teaching. But with the other levels and with the beginners, you often find that, aha moment with them after the first week or two, where they suddenly start to sense energy, and it's like, oh my God, what is this? What's happening? And I'm feeling really relaxed and things are moving. And so I really like that with the beginners. But, you know, some people, they just want to dabble for 5 or 6 weeks. And, you know, I've tried that Qigong now, and, you know, it's supposed to be brilliant. And I'm like, you know, are you practicing every day and you're getting your half an hour every day in, but not every day? And I'm like, well, why not every day? And you see, because as you know me, I'm an everyday trainer, you know, dedicated one, like stuck in there doing it. And, you know, but we have to realize also with the people that come to us, they're not the same as what we are, you know, or they're not looking for the same depth or the same understanding as what we are. They just want a little bit of health and a bit of relaxation and a bit of, and for a while, it's, I suppose you have to understand that these are the people who are coming through on the path, and these are the people who are coming to you for, you know, that small piece of help. Not everybody is going to be as dedicated or as focused or looking for the same level of connection within the Qigong as what we have or what we're looking for. Going deeper on that. So yeah, like I'm teaching the online class now, which there's about 14 students in at the moment, and every week, you know, you get an email or a text from somebody going, oh my God, that was a great class last week, and I really feel the benefit, and, you know, that story that you told really resonated with me, you know, and I really feel like, you know, you hit the nail on the head with that story, and, you know, and then you explain from the story how to use the exercises to let go of that certain emotion. And that really, really resonated with me. And then the next person will say something else. But of course, the online classes, they're different than the physical, because you can't, you know, adjust people the way that you'd like to, or, you know, that foot's not in the right direction, or they're feeling the connection there, you know. And so you don't get that interaction on the online, but we're still allowed to reach a deeper, like I have people who are in France and I have people who are in Ireland and different parts of the country. So you would never be able to get to those people. So the online has its own benefits in certain levels. But yeah, what I'm doing is like 6-week programs with them, taking them in, and then I'm offering them more after that. Like, so if you want to go deeper into the next level, we'll take you into that next level. And so we're working on building that with them. But like that, keeping it simple, keeping the process easy at the start, very, very basic stuff that's, you know, allowing them to experience the feeling of energy and, you know, to get some movement in their body, you know, because you've got to get that movement and the structure in the body first before you can. I suppose 50% of enlightenment comes from correct posture and structure first.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. I mean, looking at it now, myself and yourself and probably a few others in Ireland are at that spearhead, you know, where it's about to just really kick off, you know. And it's been coming for a while. They tried it in the 90s, right? They tried to get, I'm sure you remember, you know, all those little sort of programs that came out, and I've been pulled into 1 or 2 projects with people in the past, and it's never really come to fruition. And I think possibly, I can be standard correctly, but a lot of the Qigong that we were exposed to in the early years was like an add-on to martial arts, or it was like you do this thing as a part of the martial art. And I remember when I was training first as an instructor for the instructor program, and the guy that was teaching me, he was ex-military, US Army, and he said, like, his teacher would say, you do Qigong for 10 years before you even do internal martial arts. So it was like Qigong was the prerequisite, you know, and we're using Qigong as a loose terminology, right? Because obviously as a word, it's not that new, you know, it's a relatively new terminology, like Kung Fu is relatively new, right? But I mean, the prerequisites had to be laid, your foundations of relaxation, structure, alignment, all those things. But I am seeing, and I'm seeing it in the Tai Chi world, I don't know if you've been watching, but there is some kind of revolution. We're starting now to really see Westerners doing some really amazing stuff, like doing some stuff that the Chinese masters could only do. And I think the same thing is starting to happen with Qigong, and it's really, really exciting. And people are beginning to realize it's not unique to the Asian culture. You know, it is what it is. But I think as some of the older masters die off, especially those ones who don't live in a culture that's quite repressed, in other words, they might live in the outlying regions, Malaysia or Taiwan or Macau or something like that, they're dying, and they're realizing it's not really going back into the existing culture of the youngsters coming up. They're interested in becoming more Western-like. And what we're seeing now is this balance shift. Yeah. And I'm wondering, did you, when you were a kid, because I know Kempo was, there's many branches of Kempo, but it's very circular, isn't it? There's a lot of breath and relaxation needed, but then there's relaxation and tension, and then that kind of translates to the Tai Chi as well. And then with what I found with the sword martial art when we were training was it was quite spiritual. There's a lot of a spiritual aspect to it.
Yeah.
More so actually than some of the martial arts that I did. And I definitely found a bit of and I think this is unique to certain Asian cultures. There is this, what I call executive black belt club, where you have the briefcase and the club, and you've kind of paid for your black belt, but you're not really, but you really earned your black belts. I remember in the 80s, I don't know what it was like for you, but I remember I was talking about this with a client the other day, and it was tantamount to child abuse, effectively. You were 15.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. I was 15 to fight two guys who were in their 30s, and had to fight 2-on-1. Now, granted, it wasn't full contact, in a ring. It wasn't like MMA or anything. So there were, but you were taking some serious shots, for a 15-year-old. A 15-year-old going up against 2 grand.
A lot of the time in the Kempo world, it was done on your belt. So whatever belt level you were, it was just your belt. So it didn't matter. I'm short in stature, short and stocky, but I could be fighting somebody your size. It didn't matter. There was no weight categories. There was nothing like that. It was, if you're a brown belt, black belt, you're in there, you're in the mix, and you fix it up, And their competitions were like that, And the smallest of pads, there was nothing on the pads, And we were, gum shields, not heard of at that stage, And no foot pads, no shin pads.
No shin pads, none of this. The Taekwondo style thing or the American style kickboxing. I remember I didn't even remember I couldn't even use a gum shield. I didn't even realize you had to put it in hot water. I was putting it in just and you had to mold it. So I learned a lot of things. I did towards the end, as I got older, I did wear a groin guard because I'd received a few nasty shots and I didn't want to end up as a soprano.
Groin guards are paramount in Kempo because half of Kempo stuff is to the groin. Every technique involves kick to the groin.
I made a big mistake. I went out and got the cricket one, the box. And of course, if you hit it right, it just flies out, right? So it's hilarious. You got this flying cup, right? And the lads were saying, no, you need more kind of the sumo style one with the strapping. Did you ever do any competitions? Were you ever involved in any of that? So apart from the Haidong, but prior to the Haidong.
Oh yeah, we used to compete. Yeah, we used to compete quite a lot. Yeah. And sometimes, in Ireland we have what's called the Order of Malta, who will be at the side of the ambulance crew. They were usually quite busy at our Kempo competitions. Nosebleed after nosebleed. Many. And specifically at the higher. At different areas. And the ladies were carnage. They were just trash each other. And it was entertaining to watch. But, so did many competitions.
I had a bizarre experience when I was, I think I was 14. I was blue belt in Tang Soo, which, is an approximation to Korean karate. It's kind of a hybrid. And it's got various names, Tang Soo, Subakdo. And then at the time you thought, it was the bee's knees. There's no other better martial art than this until, of course, you grow up. And you face a few other serious characters. And then you realize, But I remember being late. We were driving this crappy Skoda, one of the first Skodas. I think we were the only family in my hometown to have a Skoda. And it kept breaking down, and it took us hours to get down to Watford from Northern England. And I was just, it was just thrown into the competition, and somehow I'd managed to get through the first round without even fighting. It was kind of weird. It was just put him in. I think my teacher was quite well respected and had a lot of pull because he was a serious hard case. And I ended up going in, and I think my first fight was against a Korean champion, and she wasn't even a black belt. Like, she wasn't even a black belt. And I was like, I'm fighting a girl, you know. What is got, you know, but like, not that mattered in the 80s because everybody just thought there was no. But I remember knowing in my head, this woman is a champion. Like, this is a 17-year-old, 14-year-old boy, this 17-year-old champion. And she was just leathering me and picking me off and was fast, accurate legs. But I was aggressive. And it was kind of this dichotomy of, it's a girl, don't hit her. But at the same time, I'm getting battered. So I made a conscious decision to just go in hard and fight and just really try and push her back. And, you know, I made excessive contact at the face. I broke her nose, and it was like, ooh, suddenly now I'm in big trouble, even though she's leathering me. So so I get punished. Obviously, the usual thing was, you know, infinite amounts of push-ups, with then sitting in a kind of a humble pose, which is usually like a kneeling position, and then seeing all your 10 points wiped off the board to 0, you know. So you're starting at 0 and she's got 10. And I think there was a part of me was like, okay, you know, do I just kind of let this go because I ain't going to win? Or do I just continue anyway and maintain the fighting spirit? And I did, and I got back up. And I remember my dad was there, and he came up afterwards and he said, I'm so glad you didn't let that misdemeanor stop you from fighting, you know, because it didn't matter whether she was a girl or what. It was, she was highly skilled and was going to beat you, but you didn't give up. And she actually came over to me at the end of the competition. I think I got bronze and she got silver, and then there was a guy got gold. And she said, she said, that was one of the best fights I've ever had. And I said, why? And she said, because usually boys pull back, and I don't get an accurate fight, you know, I don't get an accurate representation of what it's like to fight. She said to me, actually, I'd have been more afraid if you were 17, you know. So it was good to get that, you know. And then going into the black belts and fighting at black belt, that was a different arena. My biggest problem was my engine. You know, first couple of fights, I leathered them. It was no problem. But I didn't have a strong cardio system. We weren't cross-training like people do now. Our training was fighting, club. There was no running or skipping. So we're fighting Americans who, as you know, the Americans, they play in high college basketball, they're running in an athletic club, they probably cycle to school, they're doing like 10 million things, and then they're cross-training, and then they're doing fitness training. And so then you find people with just bigger engines. It was a lot harder. You had to be really, really skillful. Did you have any of those experiences yourself, or?
Yeah, we had many different experiences on the circuit, you know, fighting with different levels, and, you know, different areas of the country would produce bigger lads, smaller lads, you know, different. You would see that as you're going around, you know. And I suppose way back then, you probably would have had people who were training, you know, we couldn't probably call it cross training, but they were probably doing GAA and football and different things like that. So they would have good, like you say, good cardio experience, you know. So yeah, but like as you say, your story with fighting the girls as well, that was always a thing, you know. Whereas you know, your male mindset says, oh, you know, you're fighting a girl, but I've been hammered by some of them, you know, over the years. And then it was like, I remember we used to train in a school in the secondary school where I went to school, and we were sparring one night, and I was in class the next day, and my metalwork teacher said, Mr. Kane, I want to talk to you. And he goes, but what? I believe that you're involved with beating women up, you know. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you know. And he's going, I walked by the class last night and I seen you fighting this girl, and you were like giving her hell, like, you know. I says, yeah, but you had me there 5 minutes before that, you would have seen me being given hell, you know. That was retaliation. Yeah, but yeah, it was like that, you know.
Yeah, it's
hung and quartered in front of the school classroom, you know. And then, of course, everybody's going like, well, that's what he does all the time. He's just a fighter, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've watched some of the videos.
But like that.
The MMA fighters, you know, some of the women. And, you know, you get these guys who are maybe famous podcasters, or maybe they, you know, have their own radio show, and they're invited in to have a pop, you know, these MMA girls. And it's terrifying. Like, these women just like lift them up and slam them down. I mean, do you have any viewpoints on MMA? Do you think it's been around now, since 92 or something like that?
Yeah.
Do you think it's just still a trend? Do you think it's going to kind of burn out? Or do you think, you know, is it here to stay?
I think it'll probably continue because of the money and the investment and things like that's in it, you know, and people want to do that. But, you know, from martial arts point of view, it loses some of the, you know, the characters and the ethics and things that we would have gone through with the different, you know, even wearing uniforms and the discipline and, you know, the bowing down and all that kind of stuff. You know, that's not fully there within the MMA, and they've mixed it in a lot.
Yeah.
So, I think, though, because of the monetary aspect of it and, you know, the kind of money that's involved, it'll hang around for a while, definitely, you know.
The thing kind of annoyed me the most was there was, and I'm not saying this is true for all MMA fighters. I mean, a lot of them do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so there's obviously some element of brotherhood and sisterhood and discipline there. But there was, you know, you'd see videos of people doing martial arts or whatever, and especially on social media, and then you'd always get some idiot chiming in saying, "Oh yeah, I'd like to see them 5 minutes in the ring with an MMA fighter." And it's we totally get that. You don't need to tell us that. Like, those guys that fight in MMA, it's a tough sport. It's really tough. And you have to be slightly psychotic, let's face it. But whenever I trained in the martial arts, I never did it to fight. I mean, yes, certainly I was bullied as a youngster, and it did help. It built confidence, but it was character building. And, you know, knowing that you get in there and you've got to clean the floor, the dojang, you know, and then you've got to line everybody up, warm them up. You had to press. Remember, I don't know if you ever did that, but you'd spend many nights like getting your suit and pressing it, and every single crease was out of it. And I think it was that military aspect that built character, you know. And my friends used to, when I moved to Ireland, they said they used to miss me because we'd walk into a bar or a club, and they said even if they knew there was no chance they could defend themselves or they got into trouble, there'd be an issue. They always felt safe being in the same room with me because not because of anything other than that self-confidence that it brought, you know. Has martial arts saved your life? Have you ever been?
Yes, twice.
Yeah.
I had a knife pulled on me in Dublin one day, and a guy tried to attack me with a knife, and then luckily, you know, of course, knife defense is very, very dangerous. But my initial instinct was crescent kick, inside kick into the wrist, knife went, and then I just took him with another punch, and then I got out of there. So I was like gone. As quick as that was, the knife was out of his hand, I was gone. But, you know, knives are very, very dangerous. They're very quick, and, you know, you just can't mess about with it. But it just seemed to happen. The timing was there. My instinct and my reaction happened at the same time, and boom, it saved me. Another time I was walking down through Abbey Street in Dublin, and of course I happened to be passing by somebody, and so I moved inside. I would never really walk along where there's doorways. You know, I always walk in the middle of the footpath, not at the outside. You know, generally environmental awareness is so important, especially in a big city. But I was passing by somebody, and I happened to go in towards the doorway, and the guy grabbed me from the doorway. And because with Kempo Karate, you've got so much, you know, close contact, hand to hand, really in tight kind of work. So I was able to do some nice moves from there to get me out of that doorway, get me off the street, you know. So, but yeah, that's the good thing with Kempo Karate. Everything is in close. It's street. It's designed for the street. So when those instances happen, you know, you instantly go in there and just kick off. And it's like, and that's why we train them. You train them until you can come to that state of, you know, Mushin, no mind, where you don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
And when you get to that level, well, then you know your karate's going to work for you.
My dad used to say that to me. He said, look, you might not be the best, the most confident, or you might not even be the strongest fighter, but if you have the element of surprise, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
That can win a fight, that can take somebody by surprise. And for me, I think the biggest experience was in Budapest. I was visiting there as a tourist with a friend, and we were coming back from a late night meal, and mistakenly, for some reason, we decided to dress up. I think we were trying to get into some fancy place that we couldn't get into, but on the way back, we were dressed to the nines, with the long black cashmere jacket on and the whole 9 yards. And two chaps were coming up behind us, and it wasn't a case of I'm going to have to fight or defend myself. It was that spatial awareness. It was that the spider senses were tingling, and I could see one of them had basically a machete, for want of a better word, and it was kind of, you could see it sort of glinting in the reflection of the windows of the hotel. And I said to my friend, I said, she was like, what do we do? And I said, look, we're going to do something you're not supposed to do in Hungary, which is jaywalk, like we can get arrested. But what we're going to do is take a right turn, and when I say run, we're going to go like Frogger, and we're literally going to try and go between the cars and get over this eight lane highway. And that's what we did. And it was interesting because I could feel it coming. I could feel the intention behind their motives. I could feel it building up in me. And that was, that's 20 odd years ago. And later on, a few years later, that this was kind of a common practice. They would wait for people to take the subterranean passageway underneath the highway, and they would kick you or they'd push you as you're at the top of the stair, and then they'd threaten you with a knife or some kind of weapon. As long, obviously if you're still awake or whatever. But just when you're on your own, it's one thing. When you're on your own, and then when you're with a partner who's female, you're kind of like thinking, right, whatever they're going to do to me, whatever they're going to do to her. So there's all these scenarios, but it was just like an instant feeling of, before they even had a chance to think. So for me, the martial arts gate helped with that. Let's go a bit forward now. So I know you've done some Spring Forest, Qigong, you've done the stuff with the Korean martial arts, Tai Chi and meditation. I know you're big into meditation. That's part of your daily thing.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you use to nourish yourself?
So I suppose the daily practice, meditation, the Qigong, and then also you got to look at your food and your water and things like that as well. That's how you nourish the body, and proper hydration every day, simple nutrients, good food, looking at the 5 elements, all the different colors in your food. So when you make your dinner at nighttime, having a look at, have you got your red in there for your heart fire? Have you got your green in for the wood element? So using the food as nurturing all of the elements and the energy of the body is important as well.
Yeah.
Daily practice, but like I practice Qigong every single day, and after years, I suppose you can have your odd rest day where you can sneak it in there because you've built up the energy to take that day off. But, for me, running a clinic like yourself, busy, 40 hours a week, in order to maintain that energy and to nurture my energy so that I can, be there for the clients 100% every time. It's, small practice in the morning when I go into the clinic, and then every night, hour and a half practice every single night. Yeah. And that's where I get back to, building up the energy again for the next day's work. And just that commitment to it is really what I like to do and how to nurture myself. And that's what builds it for me. So
on your days off then, when you're not working, you've got the weekend, I know you like your music.
Yeah.
You play a few instruments, you've got your
music
vinyl.
Is the big.
You play the harp.
Vinyl is the big thing.
The mouth harp.
Mouth harp, yeah.
So I think this is a really important aspect that people need to understand about therapists and healers is it's important to have interests outside of just healing and martial arts.
Yeah.
because that's all part of that. And from the conversation we've had and the sort of the story from growing up in Dublin to working through the martial arts, how did you become a healer? Like, what was that transition into now? Because they do merge, that you find a lot of martial artists are involved in healing, and there's a lot of I find there's a lot of talented healers, but they don't know what they're doing, and then there's a lot of talented martial artists, but they don't know what they're doing. So how did you suddenly go, right, I've got a real calling now to, because I know you were involved in the computer electronics.
Yeah, I was in the electronics business. You know, when I was leaving school back in '89, I always had an interest in self-healing. You know, would have always liked to explore Chinese medicine at that stage. And of course, career guidance was like, no, don't do Chinese medicine in Ireland. Electronics is where you'd be doing engineering in school. You've done German, you've done chemistry. You know, you're perfect for that. You know? And in my heart and soul, just never felt totally connected to it. But anyway, I ended up doing a microcomputer technology course in what was FOSS at the time, which was like a training industry in Ireland. The reason why I went there is because you could get £27 a week, which meant we would go to the nightclubs at the weekend. Right? So I used to give me mother £5, and I think I used to get it back on a Sunday, you know. But so anyway, we were getting trained. We were in this place every single day, 5 days a week, studying microcomputer technology. And at the time, it was a City and Guilds qualification. So, and there was always this great connection within there for people to get work out of it and get a job. So I got my first job as a, electronic maintenance technician, repairing alarm systems. So basically down at the component level, cutting out the resistors and the transistors and replacing them. And then I ended up going to college at nighttime then, even while I was working at day jobs. I went to Kevin Street doing electronics for 5 years, 3 nights a week, along with doing my martial arts training as well. So I was doing that. And so I ended up, repairing alarm systems, then going into telecommunications, installing telephone systems, PABXs. Liffey Valley, I put the phone system in the whole place, this big shopping centre in Ireland. I've done in the hospitals, I've done all kinds of stuff.
Wow. And
then I jumped from job to job. I was always being, headhunted and picked. So I ended up being a technical support manager for GE, like one of the biggest manufacturers of security systems. And then it was during that time when I started to experience back pain and stress in my back. And then it was like, had some physio, yeah, it feels okay. Had some chiropractic, yeah, it feels okay. Still there though. Then I was introduced to kinesiology and energy work and the emotional connection to what's going on in my back. And that really sorted out what the issue was at the time. So then I was like, okay, where do I learn this? And yeah. And then so the girl who was working with me, she said, well, I'm actually opening a kinesiology college in Mullingar, where I just moved close to. And I was like, this is it. This is destiny. It's finally the gate is open for me. So I started studying kinesiology, and of course, being the crackhead that I am, when they ask for 10 case studies, I do 20. Right? Typical, when Capricorn had to get right in there, boom. So she'd be like, no, I only want 10 case studies. I can't read on it. So no, you're getting 20. Here you go. And a lot of kinesiology, of course, is to do with the brain and the electrical system of the body and the wiring of the body. So that was all like so easy after doing 10 years of electronics, We were in a class one day, they were talking about Ohm's law, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to go get coffee. I'll talk to you later on, And then, so I used to help people out in the class then with all the, that kind of stuff, because I had a great understanding of the electronic system.
So you went from external electronics, like literally physically manifestation of external tools, to the internal work.
Yeah.
And
then, I had the
relief from your back pain, then eventually that started
to sorted it right out. And it was just like, this is it. This is what I need to be doing then for the rest of my days. I need to be helping people.
Yeah.
So I made the decision.
I understand you then you traveled to the Isle of Jersey as well at some point to work.
Yeah, I was over in Jersey with Professor Diana Mossop studying fetal biophysics and that whole system. And she has a craniosacral system that she developed herself called podorosidian therapy. So I did that along with all the flower formulas, viruses, bacteria, all her understanding of how to treat the body from many different levels using vibrational medicine.
Yeah.
And that really is still a mainstay of what I do every day. I use fetal biophysics all of the time. And I use them as a support mechanism within with the kinesiology and the Australian body work that I do.
Yeah.
But I remember making...
It always seemed to me that you searched outside of Ireland, you know. I mean, apart from obviously in the martial arts world, but you always picked something different. Like, that's what I liked. You always went, right, I'm not going to go down what everybody else is doing. Not going to go down this acupuncture route or this type of herbal route. You were always looking for something that resonated. And I think that's really important, to follow what you're drawn to.
It always had to sit with me. You know, I've looked at different things over the years, and, you know, just, you don't get that energy connection to it. And then I'll just find, or I'll talk to somebody, or, you know, even with like neurostructural integration, which is an amazing, you know, version of the bone therapy. But when I talked to Michael Nixon Levy, he came to Ireland, he's the founder of it, how he created this, and how actually NST is a combination from kinesiology practice, you know, osteopathic work, sacrooccipital. As soon as I worked with that, just an instant connection. And, you know, like that, I probably approached it a bit like martial arts training. I trained it and trained it and trained it until it became ingrained in my hands. And then it's just like, now it's not a preset movement. It's like, what does this body need when I feel it? Where's the move I need to apply here? And that's when it becomes a skill set. And I remember, you know, emailing Michael Nixon going, you know, my God, I'm so happy for you, you know, creating this system, you know. And he goes, Alan, it's not the system. You know, it's in your hands what you have. It's what I've given to you. You've learned the basis, but you've learned to use it, you know, your own way. You know, you do it your own way. And that's what makes it unique. And it's like when I do a treatment now, it can be a combination of kinesiology, NST work, flower formulas. You know, people come in and goes, you know, what's your title? I don't have the title. You know, you're not going to get the chiropractic title here, you know. But what you will get is bloody good results, you know.
I mean, I have to say, I've seen a big difference since when I first met you, which I'm going to guess was around 2008. Like, I remember you used to have all your structures, you'd have your books, and then you'd pick out your book, and then you'd do your system and do the testing. And now, when I come to you, it's very rarely there. It's only there as a backup, just to reinforce what you already know, which is pretty much what doctors and Chinese medicine practitioners do. The books should only eventually just perform as a reference, just to reinforce. But I've definitely seen a big shift in the way you work. I know it works. I mean, you treated my son several times, me several times, and it's not just the physical; it's the emotional shift as well. And all through this lockdown phase that we've had, we collaborated a lot with talismans, sacred Taoist magic. We've done some work with the Zoom and getting people going, and I think now we're kind of shifting into a new age where I believe the future is giving people self-empowerment and giving them, and it's not just about giving them the knowledge, it's about it's like, you know, you can feed a man fish, or you can teach them how to fish, that kind of thing. So if there was one or two daily cups of chi ideas, or route, you know, what would be the advice that you'd give for people to maintain, apart from obviously hydration and good diet, the other things that you would, that are outside of that, from Alan Kane's huge data bank of knowledge? Is there something you can say to people that could really make a difference as we move forward into this new paradigm?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the really important things is connecting with the breath, you know, but also taking time for yourself. I'm big into this, you know, pausing your day, contemplating what's going on at the time, taking that time to really, you know, just put the pause button on and sit back. You know, for me, you know, I do it at nighttime with the vinyl listening and the records, or I get on my scooter and I head to the lake and I just sit and be. And people are like, what do you do when you get there? I just press pause and I just sit and be, you know. And so pressing pause on your day, giving yourself some space. The more space you give yourself, the more you'll expand, and the more time that you'll actually generate. It's crazy, like, you know, so much more comes around it. Finding a daily practice of something like what we do with the basics of Qigong, connecting with the breath, starting to understand that internal connection. And, you know, what I find is, you know, people get sucked into everything that's going on, and they just think that they have to be part of it and they have to be on stuff all the time. And have to be on social media all the time, and have to be checking this and checking this. They're constantly plugged in all of the time,
Yeah.
And it's finding that space for yourself where you can just sit back and say, okay, this is time for me. This is how I reset. This is how I nurture myself each day. If it's reading a book, if it's listening to music, if it's connected to your breath, find yourself somebody who can guide you along the way, like I've had with you and many great teachers. And, we're here for everybody to help them, along the way, and finding a gentle practice that you can do and you can use. And it's not going to be like standing on your head doing 50 million in-breaths, What we teach is very, very simple. It's very effective. It's very profound in the results that we give. So it's like, come along and, talk with people who or, get a recommendation from myself or yourself. And there's many great teachers that we know all around the world.
Yeah.
Put people in contact with.
Sure.
And so that's really important, that people have a daily practice for themselves where they can actually take that time out and just unplug from everything that's going on, because, you're just being fed all the time, just information overload. And that's why I love doing the sword work as well. When you draw that sword, you're totally connected with the sword, and then you're not thinking about anything else because you've got a sword in your hand and you're totally connected, and that's where you get that spiritual connection.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's an art form. It truly is an art form. It is. You have to. As you say, when you draw that sword, you better make sure you're using it correctly. Like there is no mistakes that can be made. What I love, one of my favorite stories that you told me that I absolutely love is the runner, is the guy that did a marathon.
Oh yeah,
County.
Stevie McGowan.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal. I think we should share that with the viewers and then maybe wrap up this this first episode. But I want to leave this story with you because it's a phenomenal understanding of the human psyche, of how powerful beliefs and thought systems can affect us, and how, in fact, the person that was going through this is, in his own way, a thought coach and a leader. And it's showing how we all, at some stage, we all need some level of intervention. It doesn't matter how much of a guru you think you are. So, Alan, I'll hand it over to you because this is a phenomenal. I think it's a phenomenal story of a human.
Yeah, good friend of mine. He took on the challenge of running 100 marathons in 100 days, which was just a big challenge, And of course, when he started off doing it, he had a lot of things going on, a lot of support mechanisms going on, but beside him, after about day 10, legs wouldn't work. So I get this phone call from him, and I said, he's going Alan, I'm in the middle of this challenge. Legs aren't working. I can't even, I can just about walk. I'm trying to just struggle along just through walking. I've got another, 20 odd miles to do today. And then I've got another, 90 days to do. He said, but I knew if ever this challenge was going to break down, the one person I was going to call was you. And he calls me the White Wizard because I've done some amazing things with him. And so this is where the name has come. And this is where the White Wizard has arrived from. So I said, okay, where are you? And he goes, I'm on some back road in Sligo. And I said, okay, look, I'll find you. So I threw the treatment table in the bed. And I remember I had my old Mercedes C180 at the time, big workhorse, and we headed across from Mullingar to Sligo. And I was phoning this driver, and I was like, where is he? And he's going, oh, down here. So anyway, found him, and we're at this old, disused pig farm. So it's like an old pig farm, still smelling the pigs. And the sun was beating down. It was really strong. And I said, right, what's going on? So I threw up the table, started to do some kinesiology tests, and I found what I would call a hidden trapped emotion in relation to him not being able to run. And so once I discussed this hidden trapped emotion with him, what it was and why it was affecting him, it was completely just hit the nail on the head. And that's exactly what's going on. And he's like, okay, what do I do now? I said, you don't do anything, just leave it with me. I'm going to do it. So I did a kinesiology correction with him, did some structural work for the legs. He gets up off the table, boom, starts running again. And his van driver standing looking at me going, who the fuck are you? Excuse my language. He's like, this guy couldn't walk 10 minutes ago. He said, now he's off running again. And he said, the funny thing is, he said, once Alan Kane arrives, he said, I'll be sorted, because I've done some work with him before. And I said, okay, my commitment to you is I'm going to meet you.
He did thousands of miles, like literally, didn't he? Or something, or hundreds of miles anyway. Right?
Yeah. And then, so I said, okay, I'm going to meet you every week along this journey, and I'm going to support you. I'm going to give you my time. And so I used to meet him once a week and do a balance on him. And he made it through, 100 marathons, 100 days. And that wasn't enough for him. Then he took on 60 ultra marathons in 60 days, so 60 miles a day for 60 days. So he rang me up and said, right, you're on call, right? So I said, yeah, I'll be there for you every minute of the day. So we finished that challenge, helped him all the way along the way. Then it was man versus horse. So he raced the horse for 24 hours around the park in Armagh. And it's just like, you're going to be there, Alan. So I'm up like half the night going, therapist on call,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was amazing to see, the connection and the emotional connection, and just how you can transform somebody within minutes, and then just allow him to continue on his journey and to finish that.
Yeah. It's amazing, how that trapped emotion can be can be in anyone, right? It can be in anyone.
Oh yeah. Like I've had my knee kick off, and the first thing I do is I go to you and you go, you know what this is about. We go in and we just sort it out. And, while I'm there treating everybody, I come to you, you come to me. We all need that support from people, and that's really important that we have a network of support.
Absolutely.
Of trusted people. And, I only let one or two people work on my body the same as you.
Yeah.
We know they're the skilled people who know and understand us. And, when something shows up, we just go, right, just call Anthony. And, yourself, me and you, we just do whatever the time is. We get it sorted,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's really important between us two, is that connection,
Yeah.
and that, we know we're there for each other and we support each other.
I mean, it speaks volumes when my wife, it says, like, there's a very few people I trust in the world, and one of them is Alan, and if my wife is saying that, like, I know that's kind of weird, but it is like the gold standard. And I mean, he's done amazing work with my son. I remember he had this kind of like infection, molluscum, all around his eyes. And it was like, we went there, did the test, and, like 7 days later, they all fell off, like literally just were falling off. He could just brush them off. And before that, I remember he'd had the sensory processing disorder, and it was all messing up with his gut. And we took him off. God love him, he was such a good kid. Like, we took him off beef, tomatoes, dairy, cheese, like all the things that he really loved. He couldn't have ice cream. He went off it for like 7 months. And like, so he was going to school eating like vegan cheese and like gluten-free bread, and he did it. And then he completely resolved. Just the only thing is gluten, obviously, but and not too much dairy. But it's just amazing what you can do when you've got the tools. And I think that what I think is, because you're there working every day, grinding every day, it shows in the work. There's a lot of part-time therapists out there that do 5 hours, 10 hours, and they're not, it's nice. It's a nice thing to do. But they don't have the level of experience comes through. So we're going to leave a link below to what Alan's doing. So he's the Marshall Wellness University. He's doing a Qigong. I presume you're going to be doing another intake shortly.
The next 6 weeks we're starting up shortly now.
Yeah, cool.
So that'll be online, and we'll be teaching the Chi Life method.
Awesome. I wonder where that came from. But great. So Alan's out there basically promoting Chi Life method, which is kind of a hybrid Qigong system for the modern world. And then I think what else is coming up? Well, hoping to see some form of either workshop or get together some point this year would be nice. And Alan's, if you are going to see Alan for therapy, bear in mind, very busy man, so give him plenty of notice. We'll leave a link to the clinic below as well. Is there anything else, Alan, that we missed that we could, one last message before we go? I know we can obviously come back and do this conversation again, but is there anything that you feel needs to be shared before we end the conversation?
No, I think we've covered quite a lot tonight. It's just really good to get this started, and I'm like really happy just to be on here with you and just sharing the information. And as you say, we'll come back on, we'll do more. And it's just a way to share information with people and to allow people to see what is actually available. And that, you know, a lot of it, you don't need to be afraid of what it is. You just got to understand, you know, what this magical word Qigong is. Yeah. And, you know, get in touch with the people on board here, me, yourself, other teachers that will come on and other people who'll be there, and just, you know, trust in the process that if you're listening to this now, you're supposed to be here with us and you're supposed to be listening and learning with us. And, you know, we'll share and we share openly, and we just give people, there's no hidden, you know, messages behind anything what we're doing. We're sharing. We want people to stay well. We want people to be well. And that's, you know, that's the goal of what we do every day.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, the golden takeaways for me is, you know, obviously sleeping, eating well, all those things are obvious to nearly all of us, right? And it's actually quite hard for some people. But like having some form of self-nourishment, Qigong, Qi, energy, Gong skill acquired over time and effort. And I think it's going to be the future health technology. I do believe so. I think that we've kind of filled that space with yoga and Pilates, partly because they were more transferable in the English language. And I think that now we're disseminating it. So watch this space. Let's see what happens. If this conversation resonated with you, leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you wish. Have a look at the links below in the comments section, description section. And I'm going to say thanks very much for your time, Alan. I know it's been a longer conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We'll see you very soon.
Thank you.